We are live. Welcome to EMIY TV. Today the show is being hijacked and led by the Queen. She's in the building. I am your host, Calvin T. Mann. And just wanting to get this thing started. Today's topic, Ms. Heather.
Our topic today shifts everybody in a different direction, but I'm prayerful that it opens you up to looking at life through a new lens and through a new perspective. So our topic for today is how to use imagination to solve problems. And I'm excited to have Calvin here, our engineer extraordinaire, Monique, and Dave as he is patched into us. So I think it's a great conversation to have. One of the questions that often people think about when you think of imagination is being childlike. And sometimes we associate that childlike thinking, and when it comes to imagination, as something that is, that requires judgment, good, bad, right, or wrong. And so today I want us to expand our minds and our hearts and our thoughts to look at this tool, this gift that each of us have been given as a way to help us to change and create the world that we really want to see. And using that, we're going to begin with understanding more about imagination and its place in our lives and in our world. And so I want to open up some really interesting perspectives to you today. So the first one is I really want to define it for you. So let me start by giving you some definitions. So what is imagination? It's the act of forming new ideas, images, and concepts not present to the senses. It's also creativity and resourcefulness. So those are just a few ways that I want us to look at this lens, because when you think about being creative, you are actually talking about imagination, something that you really can't see using your senses. So let's start from the beginning. Let's look at what creation created, depending on your perspective, right? So if your perspective is that you follow the Bible's version of the creation story, or if you follow man's scientific version of the creation, so the collision of planets creating, its offspring that become, the creation of a star and its offspring becoming planets, and then forming our solar system, and then the maturity of that planet over time as it cools and changed, that it becomes, let's just say, Earth, right? And so that's one way that many may look at the creation story. The other creation story is through God's creation, which is, starting off with let there be light, right? And so from that point, the firmament, the land, the oceans, the vegetation, and the animals, and all life on earth, right, including mankind. So if you see the creation story either way, I just want us to look at it with an open mind and without judgment. And when I talk about judgment, it is putting the label that something is good, or the label that something is bad, or that it's right or it's wrong. So I want us to just suspend that for the course of this show so that we can truly experience imagination. So I'm going to give you a couple of other tools, right? One is when you close your eyes and you think of something either that you've seen or never seen, even in yourself, when you can close your eyes and build an image of something that you like or you want or you've always wanted to see, but it's only existing in your mind, that is imagination. So it could be an innovation, that's something that is modified to become something different and new, or it could be something totally new, a concept that's unknown to us before, but now because it's in your mind, That's the creative process. That's where imagination is. So being able to form something that either exists to be modified or doesn't exist, part of that process is using imagination. And so a lot of people have this tool and have this gift. It is actually a gift that is given to us all. It is expressed in different ways for different people, and even has a different label for people. Some people may not say, may call it daydreaming. Some people may call it the creative process. Some people may call it reaching new heights. Some people need to get high to feel like they're creative, or they can use their imagination and see things. Whatever your process is, just to acknowledge, and we're not talking about judgment, but we're talking about just to acknowledge that is a tool that we have that we can use to help us be better. And so before we get to the problem solving component of it, I want us to just think about and consider all the different ways that we use imagination. So when you think of things that make our world better, you've used imagination. A lot of inventors use imagination and then create the process. Sometimes artists have a process, or they create as they're going. They may or may not have a concept or a construct in mind. They just are letting their skill set take over. Eventually, those of us who see the outcome then can use imagination to see what that is. If you've ever admired abstract art, right? Lines or circles or swooshes and, blends of color, and you're able to see something in it. So if you're like me, when you look at the sky, you can see different shapes. You can see a lot of people with the fluffy clouds might see polar bears, or might see, something different that you can see out of something that may not typically be there or that other people see. Another way to use imagination. And imagination, just like any tool, has to be sharpened. You have to practice it. You get better at it the more you use it. And so this is another way that we use imagination. If you've ever daydreamed about meeting someone special, if you've ever daydreamed about the perfect slice of strawberry cheesecake, then you have used your imagination. When you can bring have a sensory experience about it too, makes it even better. We sharpen our imagination when we have a sensory experience around it, where we can actually imagine what it must taste like when you taste it, or what it sounds like when you hear it, when you're creating music or poetry or lyrics to songs. You can actually hear it in your mind before you actually can create that. And if you are able to, a lot of people may not see this as using imagination, people who doodle. And once you start seeing lines connecting, you create something from the stroke of the pen that you're using. You're imagining something coming from that, and you're allowing that to flow through you in a creative way. So levels of creativity help us to use our imagination. It is what sharpens us. And when we begin to take those thoughts, those concepts, or those ideas from the mind to the physical realm, that is a result of our imagination. Calvin, how about you? What things do you do to increase your imagination?
I didn't know I was doing things to
No?
increase my imagination.
Okay.
My imagination is pretty hijacked right now. It's like it's distracted completely in this work. But I do imagine or vision those things, or the things that I want to see down the road. I do that. Mm-hmm. What do I do to do that? Sometimes it's just sitting still. Right now I'm in a place of rejuvenation and figuring out some things. And so my imagination will play a part in how I can make those things manifest. And so I use, in most cases, using my imagination to manifest and see things. Like oftentimes you see things that I don't see. Like you will see, like you can see something on a cloud. Me, I might not see it on that cloud, but I might see it again on a different cloud, right? It's just the way, you know, I see things. I might see a tree where you will see a tree in the tree is a family, a man, a woman, and a kid, right? Yeah. Whereas I see the tree, my imagination show just a physical body part, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. It just depends on what it is and how I prepare or present that to myself or anything like that. Lately, it's not been there. It's mm-hmm. It's not been there, and being able to pull that up sometimes it can be difficult, right? But for the most part, I can see imaginative things. I do see things.
And I would challenge you on that thought. I believe that every day when we wake up, if you can see yourself in that day, if you can see yourself putting on your clothes before you put them on, if you can see yourself washing your face and brushing your teeth before you actually do it, I venture to say that that's even part of your imagination. Being able to see ideas and concepts even before they take place. That's part of using our imagination, even to keep us sharp. I would challenge that thought that when people say, I don't have any imagination. In your mind, you've already defined what that looks like. So you may say you don't have any imagination because you are not an artist where you can paint the particular scene that you want to have or you want to create. It doesn't mean you don't have any imagination. That's a skill. And so if you can vision it in your mind, you're using imagination. If you can think about and look at your day and say, okay, this is happening right now, but I want this outcome instead. If you can see that this is going to be a great day, if you can see that it's going to be a great day, it might be a great day because somebody bought you lunch. It might be a great day because somebody let you in traffic. But forecasting that at the beginning of your day gives you a tool and a special use of imagination to vision what you want to see. And we've been given that as a gift to help us to navigate life. If the things that you imagine are violence because that's what you've been exposed to, then that's your imagination. That's what you're creating. So, or fear, or things that make you afraid, or things that make you insecure. You're using imagination to see that thing first, and then, you're creating a idea or concept around it. So,
right.
Go ahead.
Right, which is about, being hijacked by different thoughts and processes, mm-hmm. right? And like you said, that goes back to my conversation on conditioning. You can condition your imagination to present those things, and that's where we could easily get lost, stuck, misled, misguided, right? Mm-hmm. But to see it the way that you're painting it is it's not hard that you can see it, and like you said, if, when you put it in that way, music, of course, children's book, of course, books, period, right? So yeah, your imagination can solve some problems. So,
well, you jumped down the list. So let's talk about why we have imagination. So one of the ways that we use our gifts, our talents, and our abilities is to use imagination, because it sharpens a gift, a skill, an idea. It sharpens that thing for you. So it It can give you confidence, or it can mislead your thoughts. We still have to choose. Imagination is about choice as well. You can choose what you want to see, both in your mind's eye and what you want to see in the world. And those things, you have control over your imagination. So one of the reasons why we have it is to have it as a tool. We were meant and born to be creators and co-creators. When we lose sight, or sometimes we're just on autopilot. I think when you were talking about you didn't feel that presence or that space, I think that has more to do with being on autopilot, allowing just things to happen and things to flow, or feeling that those things are being blocked by what you really want to see versus what you're experiencing. And so, but again, you still have it as a way to sharpen your gifts, your skills, and your abilities. I think that's really one of the important reasons that we have imagination. It also helps us shape our self-concept. It helps us shape what we want to see in the world. And because if we can think that the world can be better, then we can make sure that we are creating a better world. I think all of those dynamics are really important in understanding why we even have imagination. One, again, we are creators and co-creators in this world. We are the vessels by which those things are created or are managed, are present. It happens through us. We are those vessels. Nature is that vessel. And you can always find creativity and imagination in being a vessel for it. Whether it's your defining it or seeing it and making it real, I am just amazed at some of the things that are naturally occurring in our world, coming through nature. The rainbow is just amazing to me. You know, you don't get to predict when a rainbow is going to show up, but when it shows up in the sky, it is just amazing to me to see that. Just a spectrum of color that is crossing the sky, and you can keep moving or driving, and the picture of that rainbow, you shift, you can drive through it, and you see the colors. I mean, that's just one of those natural wonders to me, that if this is possible, then anything is possible. And if you're able to see a rainbow and really use that as part of being the co-creator, look at how many people can see the same rainbow that you see. I mean, it just is a wonder to me. And there's so many natural wonders. One I want to see for myself that I've only imagined what it would be like to be in the company of are the redwood forest trees. I have to see it for myself, because the concept of what it must look like and feel like to be actually a dwarf under a tree or a forest of trees that size, that's huge to me. I mean, and just like that also goes with, to me, big vision, having a vision for something larger than you can even comprehend. Just like the vision for Emmy, the vision for families. It is so important and so vast that it's almost one of those things that you look forward to seeing. I look forward to seeing our families and our communities unified. I look forward to seeing what's next. When you can think about when I was growing up, block clubs were, the block club, we had an annual block club party, and I looked forward every year to that time. And even to this day, I can still smell the hot dogs on the grill. I can hear the music playing from our neighbor's porch. I can see the decorations that everybody poured into to make that day special. I have that in my memory, but it's also a part of my imagination that I can create something similar to that. I can do that on my block, and I can do my part to make that happen, envision that over time. So Your face is priceless right now, Calvin. Did we get Dave back in?
Yeah. That's why I kept
okay.
like,
Okay. Hey, Dave.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. So,
Guess
today we're
you're
talking
letting your
about
imagination out.
yes, about imagination. Calvin is looking at me like I'm half in and half out of this whole imagination conversation.
Well, it's not really that. I have to admit that I haven't been resting well. I haven't been sleeping well for quite some time, and I'm at a point where my imagination is not as active as it should be. So, but what's up, Dave?
Oh, nothing much. Just been embracing the topic. That's all. Everything is going fairly well.
So, are you active in your imagination, Dave?
Yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. It never turns off. Matter of fact, it's probably a overcharge because I'm always thinking about something, trying to expand something. I was thinking about, imagination. When we have thoughts or we think, that's kind of the logic center. But the imagination is the creative center. And for most part in our lives, we're always in an imaginative state. It's just matter of fact focusing. Like you say right now, you probably saying, well, I'm not there because I'm kind of tired, what have you. But the imagination never turns off. It's what pushes you into being able to even present your thoughts because now you have to imagine what's the next thing you're going to say.
You're right.
So, so imagination is, I like to say, the icing to the cake. It's the creative part of who we are. And like I say, I'm always thinking about, matter of fact, it was just funny, I got a text the other day, and somebody said to me, we should have went with your ideal. Because one of the ideals I had was coming back and building what I call Connect City and building apartment complexes for college students using connexes. And I just saw it recently done. And when I came back here, I came here in 2014, is just to go to show you that 8 years later, my imagination came to fruition, but somebody else was able to produce the outcome. But that's how great imagination is. The other part I love about being an imaginative person was when I was a kid, I always fantasized about traveling. And sometimes I could be in any location I wanted to. I'm in the present state of Michigan. I could be in California, I could be in Afghanistan, I could be in Hawaii because my imagination let me go there. When I was a child, my grandfather used to make me look at this show. It's way before y'all time. It was called George Perot Presents. And so George Perot was an older guy who would travel all over the world. And that's kind of stimulated my imagination. I knew that I was going to see the world when I was a kid. So, being able to activate that imagination and then focus on what you want to create is really a gift from God. So,
Right. And so on this great topic of imagination and solving problems, you're going to have to share some tools on how you can sharpen your imagination, right? Because that using your imagination to solve problems is ideas. It is creativity, right? It's all those things, right? But how do you sharpen your imagination?
Well, a couple of ways that you can do it is the concept is to bring it from your mind into some levels of reality. So one of the ways that people have solved problems is, let's just use tools, for example. And I know that you're really connected to a lot of Black inventors. And
yes,
one of the reasons that they do what they do is because they imagined having the right tools or having the right object or having the right skill to do what they needed to do. It emerged out of a need or desire to make things easier, to make things more productive, to make us more productive. It emerges from something.
You mean like the chainsaw?
Like the chainsaw. Like, there's a couple of them.
From way back, the chainsaw.
The iron. I mean, you could go on and on. I love learning about the black inventors and all the things that they've brought into the world. But that is one of the ways that we solve problems. You have to imagine. Once you have to recognize that it is something that is needed, and then you kind of naturally start to figure things out. It's the process of figuring it out, right? When we're solving problems, we're figuring out what to do next. And so some of the ways that we sharpen that skill is to actually, okay, well, if I did this, and when you're thinking about, okay, if I do this, then this might happen. And if this doesn't happen this way, this happens this way. It's the same thing in conversation. When you're even having a conversation or waiting for somebody to speak, you're already using imagination to either anticipate what they're saying, to anticipate what you're going to say in return, or to understand those ideas. And you can see people looking up as they're thinking. When they're thinking, they're imagining an answer. They're describing a scenario to which they want to respond to. So you're using imagination even in conversation.
Okay.
What's next? What's next? What is this? The questions: who, what, when, where, why, and how. Those are cues to imagination. And it's something we do make it, I think, sometimes a lot more complicated than it is. It's asking a question and getting an answer. And you go into your mental Rolodex to get those answers, but something has to be stored there for you to pull out. And so even if you're saying, well, I don't know what to do, that means you've already thought through what to do. You've already used your imagination and that skill to start sharpening that. And then when it becomes intentional, and then you bring that thought into the world through either speaking it, drawing it, taking a picture of it, all of those different ways are ways that you bring it into the physical world. Because when it's your imagination is not in the physical world. I like to think it's in the mental and spiritual world. And when you bring those things into this world is how we start to bring those things to reality.
So that's how you sharpen your imagination.
You sharpen the tool, using your imagination as a tool, that you can sharpen it that way as well.
So Dave, in sharpening the tool of imagination, why is the imagination or the subconscious always entertained to distract?
Because you haven't developed the ability to focus. You know, one of the things, even in your imagination, you have to take a moment to pause and focus. See, our imagination, as I said before, is a creative side. It's like, as you mentioned earlier, abstract art. It's all over the place. The only way you can take that imagination and really take harness to it is to focus. And so once if you look at an artist, let's say a Picasso, they spend hours, getting ready to do a painting. You look at a painting, you say, wow, that's not so big. They should do that in no time, especially abstract stuff. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, they become very focused. They become very centered. And once we develop that ability to focus and turn it more into the ability to put our thought processes in action, then it becomes easier to not be distracted. But you have to focus. And that's very hard for people because we have so many things that's bombarding us. This is why they tell people, you'll hear a lot of people talk about people going to the park, getting away from all the things that would draw their attention and just be able to focus on what they're trying to achieve.
Right.
It's just the nature of us to get distracted because, again, that creative side is always trying to pull new things to create. But sometimes that creation can be very distracting in a negative. But once you develop that ability to focus, which is a work in itself, it's an art just to be able to focus. Because once you focus, then you are moving towards your target. But if you allow yourself to just let it run, and that's good if you're out in the park and you're just saying, I just want to have free thoughts, let them flow. That's okay. But if you're really trying to achieve something like Emmy, it came to your imagination, you decided, okay, these are the things I need to do because what had happened, you use your observation skill to see, as Heather said, there was a problem. Once you recognize there was a problem, then you turned on your imagination set, your imagination switch, that's what I want to your imagination switch began to say, this is what I need to do to achieve these goals. And then at that point, those juices just kept getting more and more saturated with more things to apply to eventually come up with EMI as well as Good Fathers Only. So the ability to focus will help your ability to control those distractions.
You know, it's funny in that analogy, right, that you use that, right, because focus has not been a strong suit, right? It's, for me, in the creativity and the use, you're right about the one thing. You have to be at a certain place in a certain time. Right now, I'm drained, right? So I'm trying not to focus on, the negativity. I'm trying to, work at, moving some of that and really, focusing on what is needed and manifesting that. But I say that to say because the most intelligent being, doesn't matter, as you just said, gets distracted. And being in a situation where you're getting distracted, sometimes the distraction is an excuse to attend to another thing, right? Instead of the focus being on the one thing, right? So that's where your creativity and your imagination collides, right? Russell Simmons said he hates idea people, right? Because they could never focus. They always bring in an idea. Every day they would bring in a different idea. Being today, Monday, this idea. Tuesday, here comes another idea. He didn't like ideas people. But the problem is with ideas people, without the imagination and the understanding and the focus, you'll have a ton of ideas, right? Without the goals, you'll have a circle of life, but it'll be just you winding in a circle. So it's your imagination needs those tools. So your imagination needs goals. Your imagination needs exercise. Your imagination needs time and silence and preparation. You know what I mean? Your imagination needs these things, and your imagination needs yourself to love your imagination in order for the imagination to be healthy. Now, I know I seem to be a little bit out, but I am very coherent and present in this solution and mindset conversation. And so I think that we need to understand that part of our imagination is problem solving when applied, as you said, and as you said, Dave, right, in action. Heather?
So, I still believe that we bring those ideas, we use our imagination to then transport that into this physical world. We build upon that. We build upon those ideas. We build upon those concepts when we bring them into our reality. And you mentioned a lot of places where those thoughts, even with feeling disconnected from your imagination or feeling blocked or feeling tired. You mentioned tired, feeling tired. It doesn't cut off the imagination. It doesn't stop the flow of ideas. It redirects it with a different energy that you then bring into this world or in this physical reality, which is heavy for you because what you're maybe expecting or looking for or wanting to experience or wanting to manifest, as you mentioned, is not doing it in the way that you want or envision it to do. And so then you bring that energy in with the thought and because your thought and your word and your deed may not be lining up at that moment, it doesn't mean that it won't line up. And I know you recognize that too. And you are entitled when you give out energy to be replenished, to be poured into, to be taken care of. You earn that, especially people who are visionaries. You need that. And you also need that break to step back. But even in stepping back, it doesn't mean that those ideas, whatever they are, and because we remove judgment at the beginning of this conversation, whether that thought is good, bad, right, or wrong. We're removing that judgment. When you bring it to the physical world, you add the judgment. We add that this is a good thought, good idea, bad idea, good, right, wrong. We add those things, which also, I believe, also adds weight to what we're already experiencing. And it just makes it heavy. It makes it heavier to carry. But the imagination itself is a vehicle. It's a vehicle that can be used to help you navigate one direction or the other. By the time you bring it into this physical world, we add so many things to it. And sometimes we have to lean on others for their ideas. Like you mentioned Russell Simmons, having a dislike for ideas people. But ideas people are the ones who are the creatives as well. They paint a picture to be used either for this time or for a time later. I always think about the Jetsons. That was a really imaginative, whoever the writer, I think it's Hanna-Barbera, right? That's a great deal of imagination that is realized right now in our world. That is one of those shows you thinking, as a young person, can you imagine? And they used dates in there. They say 2020, 2025. They actually used dates in the Jetsons as opposed to what year we were engaged in. And so to even think about that, and some of the technology, like the two-way television, as far as I know now, Dave knows a lot more about, what kind of things happen before time, because the military is always ahead of us in technology. But that was amazing to me to see that. It was amazing to me. I don't know if you guys remember when they were walking Astro the dog, it was on a treadmill. It was a treadmill that multiple people use today. And so I don't think their intention was to predict the future. I think their interest was to expose us to things that could be. And now that those ideas were brought into our world, were things that we created. They had the cell phones. They had the cell phones in there. They had the watches where you could see each other and talk to each other over the watch. That's imagination. Those concepts, those ideas were brought from the imagination into the real world and to an imaginative image called cartoons. And now the very things that were in that, and I don't know, that was what, the 60s?
His boy Elroy.
Right. Who had his own scooter, flying scooter.
Daughter
a
Judy.
Hovercraft, right? Hovercrafts, is that what that is?
Well, you got to remember, we were both shocked to learn that electric cars had more success earlier than gas cars.
Yes, absolutely.
A lot of people didn't know that.
Right. Like this is the cars that we're seeing now are not new.
It's nothing new. Electric cars is nothing new.
Right.
It's not a new concept. It's been here.
Right. What's that? The late 1800s, early 1900s?
Early 1900s.
Yeah. Amazing. But again, it started with imagination and trying to solve problems. And so the information that we got about the electric cars was even that this is even more helpful to the environment. The electric cars that they were creating at that time. It was a battle of resources. And it was a battle of who was the stronger force or the stronger voice that, that trumped electric cars at that time to gas. And so gas and oil, fossil fuels, right? So the concept was, you're right, the concept was still there, but who had the stronger voice and the more resources was the one that won that concept.
Yeah, gas. They that's when they started invading other countries to go get it, right? That's when they did that process because it was competition. Mm-hmm. But we wanted to get some fuel, the whole nine, and they went in and they created packs, right? And then they went from packs to bombing to ownership to to getting the gas. And that point, once you got to the gas vehicle, it was seen as a lot better than the electric vehicle. And the electric vehicle faded, and now here we are in need of the electric vehicle.
Absolutely. And so, again, using imagination to solve problems. And this even works in relationships. And it should work in relationships because it is one of our creative tools that we've been given. Again, to take ideas from one space to another. When you can change your mind or how you feel about something or someone, that's part of using your imagination. I want to see this. I want to make this work. That's part of your imagination. You want your relationship to work, then you have to do something to do it. Not just in your mind and in your thoughts, but you have to bring that to the reality of that relationship. What you say and actually do brings that from ideas, from that mental world into this physical world. How you do what you do is also part of that problem solving. So if somebody is saying to you, I need for you to give me more attention, spend more time with me. If that's the desire, how do you, and that's a thought that somebody is having, which also might be an expectation that somebody is having, and you bring that into this world, the mental world, from the mental world to the physical world, it's what you're doing now. So if I ask you to create more time, you got to figure out how to use your time more wisely. So maybe that time is, let's drive to work together. Let's take this trip together. However those ideas are forming are creative ways that you're coming to solve that problem. If the problem is more time is needed between the two of us, then you find ways to create more time. Now, part of problem solving is also being on kind of one accord about the expectations or the outcomes of what we're trying to do. When you're looking at tools and resources, it's a little bit more clear than it is with relationships because those concepts are mental concepts. It becomes a construct when you put it into the physical world. So now how do we take the concept of relationships? I'll use marriage for an example. The concept of marriage into this physical world. One of the ways that we do that is we exchange rings. There's something symbolic about the ring. It's something physical about that ring. You sign a contract called a marriage license. You sign a contract. Is another thing that you're saying that I am a part of this person's family, their family line, because your parents have to be on that or your witnesses have to be on that too. So to establish your identity as something real and someone real. Those are mental concepts that become physical constructs in this world to say that you two are married to each other. You have the symbol of the ring as a reminder that most people should be wearing all the time. But that's one of the ways that we bought that concept, and even the expectation that comes with that concept has to still be communicated from your mental state, from what you think, what you expect, to this physical world. And I think that even in relationships, if you don't make that expectation into a reality, you're still going to have problems about identifying what that relationship is going to be. It has to be discussed and it has to be actually played out, because this is an expectation that you may have or your mate may have, but you also need to make that into your reality together, so that and it's something that evolves. Relationships evolve. People evolve. But again, we have the expectation of the role in our head, in our minds, in our thoughts, what we want it to look like. So how do we then bring that into the reality? You have to work at it. You have to work at a relationship. That means there's actions, the thought, the word, and the deed. What are the actions that you're taking? What are the words that you're using to explain or describe or share what that might look like? It's the same way that we have to solve problems in relationships. You have to, once you have the thought or you identify what you believe the problem is, then what's next? We need to ask those questions and then also express it in a way that it goes beyond just the idea that you have in your head, but becomes something in this physical reality that somebody can help to mold and shape or meet you in whatever it is that you need in that relationship, especially those that cause problems.
Dave?
Yeah, as I was sitting there listening to Heather, I was thinking, well, I'm sure both parties, as well as anyone listens to that, your imagination was being stimulated right then. I imagine as I was doing, sitting there thinking about relationships, so obviously imagination engaged, thinking about relationships I've been in, imagination engaged, things that I wanted to apply in a relationship, imagination was engaged. one of the things you said again, as Calvin talked about, we can take those creative juices and bring them to the forefront and get them focused is to how did you find what you want to express from your imagination? So let's go back to the relationship. If you tell someone you love them, what does that mean? Obviously they have to imagine. I always say most people will not define the meaning of love to each other. They just say, "You love me, yeah, I love you. You love me, yeah, I love you." And nobody says, "What do you mean you say you love me?" And then they'll give some, I call it the elevator response. Here it is a blanket statement. But truthfully, when we say we love someone, we should be breaking that down because you may have an image in your head about what love means and the other person doesn't. So it's important that you take the creative juices that you use with your imagination and bring clarity to it. This is why you get the negative side of relationships because if some person has an imagination. He said he loved me, or maybe he meant he loved you, but he decided he loved 3 other people too. So now you get upset because your imagination go into negative mode and say, "Well, he's a buster because he didn't explain all that to me." Well, y'all never broke that down, and he couldn't have been wrong, maybe by the law, moral standards, spiritual principles. But again, if you never broke down the meaning of the word that you had, that he never broke down the meaning of the word love that he had in his mind to you so you can understand what he means, then his imagination said, "Hey, this is all fair game." So it's important that in a relationship that you communicate these things that you say because a person's imagination will run. This is why you have fans and they end up calling fanatics, right? Because in their mind, they love someone, but it's their imagination, but there's no clarity here that the other person loves them. So it's so important to articulate what you mean when you allow your creative juices to flow and then bring them into the forefront so a person get a clear meaning of what you're trying to express in relationship when you use your imagination.
Right. And
just quick statement, like my mom used to always say, people get married, they want the 2 kids and the white picket fence. Is that your imagination? That's what you see. Okay, we got this perfect relationship. But going in, you forgot about all these other aspects of the relationship because you never broke them down. I'm sorry,
and that's okay. That's where even in breaking those things down, right? That's where you get in the misunderstanding because what my definition might not match yours, right? It doesn't necessarily fit, right? And that's where difference can be an asset or an issue. Are you accepting the difference, right? Especially in my imagination, I see things completely different. In your imagination, you see it different. I might love just your face, right? It's just your face that I love. I love seeing your face every day, right? And then you might love my words. I love how you say you love me, right? Is that enough? No. This is where maturity and your imagination comes into play, right? And it's such an important area because, though you say, Dave, you say seasoned or, or where we are, we still, in our imagination, wrestle with past imagination failures. And that's in relationships, and that's in decisions, and that's in inventions and ideas. And so we need to understand by going forward to solve problems with our imagination, understanding that a single thought can be manifested into a lifetime. With that being said, Dave, tell the people where they can meet you at.
They can. Well, I'm tired today. I must be tired too, Cal. Wow. There's a David FM AM Patterson at Facebook, and you can reach me at 608-343-0875, or you can email me at drome7@yahoo.com. That's DROME7. All right.
Miss Heather?
You can always find me at yourinspiredjourney.com, or you can reach me by phone at 313-759-6954. 313-759-7855. Again, that's 313-759-7855.
You can reach me. You can reach me. I love that song. I don't know why that keeps coming in my head. But the Temptation said, well, it's just my imagination once again running away with me. Oh, just my imagination running away with me. Right? And so I say that and saying that because we have gotten away, completely away from not just the imagination, but counting on others to entertain our imagination. We have gotten away from just simply listening and loving and inquiring our words and our deeds and our actions in our minds and in our imagination. We've gotten away from, we're saturated with the sounds of foolishness and noise, and therefore our imagination is being drowned out. How do you solve a problem when you can't even hear or think the solution? Your imagination is everything. Sometimes it needs to take a break. I'm telling you, give your imagination a break from all the noise. Back up. Park, sit still, reminisce, all the good, play back. You never know what thought or idea will come into your imagination that you let go as a child or as a young person. So I challenge you, until next week, I challenge you to really take a look and see, do you have a healthy imagination? Or is somebody else playing with your mind? My name is Calvin Mann, president and founder of Encourage Young. This has been EMIY TV. God bless you and encourage me. I'm young. Peace.